Kia ora, welcome to episode 56 of the SWNZ Podcast, the podcast for New Zealand Star Wars fans. This is our final podcast for 2021 and we're looking forward to a very exciting 2022. My name is Matt.
And my name is Christy.
A bit of a quiet week for news from a galaxy far, far away, to be honest, on account of it being the holiday season, apart from, of course, a little bit of hype associated with the Book of Boba Fett online. But we've still got plenty of things we want to discuss and look forward to, so let's jump in and talk Star Wars. First up, of course, the Book of Boba Fett screens tomorrow night on Disney+. We're expecting 9 p.m. New Zealand time. There's been a few additional bits of teaser and hype material over the last few days. In particular, that Throne teaser that came out a few days back featured the first appearance of Sophie Thatcher's character. Sophie Thatcher, we don't know a lot about her character officially, although there are, of course, conversations online, speculation and rumour, but it will be interesting to see how she fits into the bigger picture. Sophie Thatcher's a younger actress. She was born in 2000. She's done quite a few projects recently. She's received a bit of acclaim for the series Yellow Jackets, but she's also worked interestingly back in 2018 with Pedro Pascal on a Netflix movie called Prospect. So she has done sci-fi before, in fact, with The Mandalorian, no less. Book of Boba Fett has 7 episodes in total and will run through to February the 9th. From next week's podcast onwards, we'll be wrapping up each weekly episode during our podcasts, and we look forward to having those conversations and sharing our thoughts with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited for, the sort of new era of live action. Obviously, the Mando kicked things off in a really exciting and successful way, but that was the only live action show for the last couple of years. So we've had this huge, big sort of yearly gap between each season. And starting with the Book of Boba Fett, we're now going to get into the sort of more different era where Disney has sort of pivoted from their one movie a year original sort of design to sort of pivoting into leaning heavily into Disney Plus and live action TV series instead of these one-off movies. So it'll be really interesting and fun. Like, all up, we're going to get a lot more content through 2022 in terms of minutes of both live action and sort of the high quality animation that will far surpass the amount that would be held in one live action movie.
Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit because that's one of the things I really want to talk about. And I know we've talked about everything we're expecting in 2022 a few times during the podcast, but I really just want to break it down and lay it out in its entirety while we're free from a few other things that we need to talk about. You mentioned that it's been a while since we had some live action, and this is kicking off quite a continuous stream moving forward, because it was in fact December 2020 that we last saw live action, because Mandalorian Season 2, the last episode screened on December the 18th. In 2020, so over a year since we saw live action Star Wars. Now we had the Bad Batch, of course, 16 episodes of the Bad Batch from May the 4th through to August the 13th, but again, that finished over 4 months ago, so it's been a while since we've had any content, and certainly a very long stretch since we've had live action content on screen. But it's going to be jam-packed. We're not 100% sure of the order, but we are fairly certain about all of the titles that we'll be seeing in 2022. Based on the way things have panned out in terms of filming timelines and the little bits of information we know, we've got a feel for the order. And I'll break that down just in a second. It's
almost kind of funny, like talking about going months without new Star Wars content when back in the oldie days, there used to be
3-year stretches. Yeah.
3-year stretches, if not that unknown period where there was just off into the distance. You just thought, okay, there's never going to be new Star Wars again, maybe some books, a couple of comics and things like that. So to be fair, we're very spoiled now in this new era. So lots to look forward to.
A podcast or two ago, I just off the top of my head speculated on how much content of Star Wars we're going to be seeing in 2022, and I speculated that it's going to be only some fairly short gaps of a few weeks at a time that would be without Star Wars content if they don't overlap anything. But I've gone and taken a look at the numbers a little more solidly, and if things don't overlap at all, there'll be 48 weeks of Star Wars content throughout 2022. That's on the basis that Obi-Wan Kenobi will have 6 episodes. That's a known. Bad Batch Season 2, which started in May. Bad Batch Season 1 started in May, so there's a small chance that we'll see the Bad Batch Season 2 starting around about that time, and that fits in with what we know. So speculating that Obi-Wan Kenobi will come first after the conclusion of the Book of Boba Fett, and then possibly followed by the Bad Batch. Bad Batch Season 1 had 16 episodes, so we may get 16 episodes for Season 2 of that. Andor Season 1 is expected to be 12 episodes, and we have reasonably solid information from an investor's call that that's going to be in the second half of the year, and that's why we're thinking that Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to come first. So Andor Season 1 will fit into the July-September slot. That matches, that gives us room for a pretty long stretch of the Bad Batch between Obi-Wan and Andor, so those three actually fit together in terms of speculation. And then we'll see Mando Season 3 later in the year, and historically that started at the end of October, the start of November, so if it follows a similar pattern, we'll see Mando S3 Season 3 starting late October, early November of 2022 after the conclusion of Andor. So those will fit together quite well if we're going to space them out, if Disney Plus and Lucasfilm plan on spacing those out. And like I say, that gives us a total of 48 weeks plus one additional week of the Book of Boba Fett screening in 2021 starting tomorrow.
It is kind of interesting that they're going to leave the gap between Mandalorian Season 2 and Season 3 as quite that long. Obviously, we've been sort of waiting for that sort of conclusion to that tense scene at the end of Season 2. And obviously, the Book of Boba Fett's going to be a good sort of fill there, but you know, we're still nearly a year away from finding out more Mandalorian episodes.
There'll be a 2-year gap between Mando S2 and S3. Yeah. And I think it's possible that that's just that they're throwing all these other shows in as a bit of a palate cleanser, because with Grogu being handed off to Luke, Season 3 might be starting a little bit of a different story arc.
Yeah.
And just that breather takes away that expectation that it's going to be quite a direct continuation. So Season 3 of Mandalorian, I would not be surprised if we see some degree of time jump and a bit of a shift in focus for the story. And we know that the Rangers of the New Republic has effectively been shelved, and the story elements that we're going to go into that will be spread across the other shows that work in this timeline. So Mando Season 3 may pick up on that, as may Ahsoka, and we may see elements of that falling into those shows.
I do wish it would be kind of fun if Lucasfilm did some sort of like State of the Galaxy type updates. I know it's a common concept with sort of ongoing video games where they sort of give you, okay, here's what's coming down the road, we've got these plans. We've had sort of a bit of a turbulent couple of years with certainly the pandemic.
Production's just having to go on hold,
Yeah, the pandemic's really throwing things around. So original timelines for things are all sort of jumbled around. The last time they gave us a hint of what was coming up in 2022 from Disney Plus, they just gave us titles, you know, no footage, no like coming in the middle of the year or coming up really soon or anything like that. And I think it would just get fans just a little bit like, it's easier to get amped for something when you know it's coming. When we had the big trilogy films, as soon as you sat down and watched one in the theater, you knew like, okay, you know, the next one's coming. And you didn't know the exact date, but, you know, there's a cadence to these sorts of films. You know pretty much when it's going to be dropping, and you knew what to expect. You knew what to look forward to. With these ones, yeah, we kind of know what to look forward to, but then there was that whole other list of all those other shows that we don't really know, you know, how many of them are on the board. And then, as we'll get to shortly, there's even a couple of new titles that are sort of cropping up out of the woodwork that haven't been formally announced. And we're like, okay, what's going on there? I wish that they'd have some sort of, I don't know, continuity with their own release and announcements and things like that. Sometimes sometimes they announce the teasers are going to drop. Sometimes they just drop online in the middle of the night.
The uncertainty has been heightened by the fact that we're not watching any content right now. I think once we get into the thick of it, then we'll stop worrying and thinking about what's going on out there. We'll focus on what's right in front of us. So I'm looking forward to that. Podcasts over the last 6 months, we've talked about it, you know, Andor filming, Obi-Wan filming, and so forth. And it's been fun to focus on those because there hasn't been any live action content actually screening. But I think once we're in the thick of it, we'll focus on the Book of Boba Fett in particular, and it'll be a little bit easier not to worry about what's going on. And by the time we sort of start really getting through 2022 and really enjoying, you know, the subsequent series, we'll be starting to hear a little bit more about Ahsoka and the Acolyte and so forth.
It's just kind of funny when I think back to it was quite some months ago now where the official Star Wars website sort of did a casting announcement for Obi-Wan, and it was like, here's all these actors.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell us who they're playing and all this kind of stuff. And then I think about things like when Ahsoka showed up in Mandalorian, it was kind of just like this open secret on the internet that it was Rosario Dawson, and she sort of wasn't formally announced. And then we're getting these rumors of other actresses showing up in, for the Ahsoka TV series, and it hasn't really been formally announced. We get these Variety, Hollywood Reporter, all these kinds of like random ones, and then there's just the rumor mill, on Reddit and within the fan communities of who might show up, and I think, this actor made a cryptic post on Instagram, maybe they mean this and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's kind of funny how for some shows they're like, here's all these people and it's up to you to guess who they are, and then other people it's just like, no, we're not going to tell you anything.
Yeah, so just on that note, you talked about the cast list for Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let's not forget that Simone Kessel, the Kiwi actress, will be in that series in an yet to be revealed role. So that's another thing that we'll really enjoy talking about next year. Look, I think there are better ways that they could handle some of the publicity and the hype, but in the absence of all that, we'll still enjoy talking about it and doing our own hype and our own breakdown and our own discussion. And that's what I enjoy about this podcast, being able to have a conversation with an audience that is like-minded in terms of looking forward to what's coming up, and we'll do what we can to fill the gap in the absence of optimized marketing from Lucasfilm.
If anything, I just feel for the actors, because getting cast in a Star Wars thing is a big deal. And, if they aren't formally announced, then they've got to, keep a tight lid on that until the thing actually gets released and then the world can see it.
Or worse, if they are announced.
Yeah,
and then 6 months to a year before they actually show up on screen, and people know that they're involved, but they have to keep quiet despite that.
But yeah, I think it's for an actor, that would be quite a sort of, a cool thing to be involved. And you sort of wish that these people got to sort of not give away their characters or anything about it, but to sort of celebrate it, because we know as fans, we love to go and support the actors that are in these shows. You go and find them on Instagram, you go and follow them. If their performance really resonates you, then you go and watch other movies that they've been in. We find ourselves going and watching other things that Pedro Pascal's been in because we enjoy him as the Mandalorian. So,
that's the thing.
It boosts their career in multiple ways.
You can use the cast as people in marketing, not just as characters. We know that Pedro Pascal, Diego Luna, Ming-Na Wen, they all love being involved in Star Wars. Yeah. And we've seen them involved in, the occasional toy release on Force Fridays and so forth. And Ming-Na Wen talks about it, past experiences as Fennec Shand, including such things as, talking about if I remember correctly, character's minifigure and a Lego set and so forth. So they do engage on that level, but they could do it a little bit more formally. That would be a fun thing to see. I love some of the interviews with Pedro Pascal and Diego Luna. I think it was Diego Luna that went on and on about Jabba the Hutt and how much he liked the character. And they're fun. They're fun people, and I think they can be good ambassadors for the brand as well as actors. As well as portraying characters. So there's a lot to look forward to. It's going to be really hard to pick and choose favourites. Obviously all the hype is just laser focused on the Book of Boba Fett right now, and it's kind of insane to think that it's only one day away at this point, and I hope it lives up to the hype in every respect. What are you actually looking forward to next year? Obi-Wan, Bad Batch, Andor, more Mando?
I honestly can't pick a favorite here. Obi-Wan has this immense hype around it. It's, I really got into Star Wars in the prequel era. It was sort of my young generation. That was how I got into it. So obviously seeing these actors, these characters back again, giving us a little bit more sort of continuation of the story as we saw it in the prequel films. And I'm really looking forward to it. I enjoy Ewan McGregor. I think he's always bringing up lightsabers and things like that and talking about his Star Wars experiences on talk shows and interviews and things like that. It's something that he's always kept around him. He never tries to sort of put it to one side, and because it was, a few years ago now that his Star Wars involvement sort of wrapped up. I still dream of the day of seeing him turn up to a Star Wars Celebration convention. He's always been, a little bit more busy, not been able to sort of attend in person. We've seen video clips and things like that. So that would be fun. Obviously, Andor, I'm very excited about. Rogue One was a really great film. Obviously, I would love to see more Jyn Erso, but because of the way her story is told,
she doesn't really come into play until Rogue
So
One.
obviously, Andor, from what we see in the movie, he has got an incredible backstory. You know, he talks about being in this fight since he was 6 years old. Now that's quite a backstory just given in that one little sentence, you know, in his little sort of impassioned thing. And you get the feeling like, you know, that there are things that he's had to do to fight against the Empire that, you know, it makes him a really complex character, and I can't wait to, and I really, really hope that there's more than one season here, because I think there's so much you can dive into.
Well, they are referring to Andor, what we're going to see as season 1, so I'm confident. And of course, there was that whole notion that Alan Tudyk was going to play K2SO, but we now know that K2SO is not going to show up in season 1, so they've shifted to where they're going to place him into the writing.
I mean, as an era for Star Wars fans, it's so perfect because it feels like tying in very closely to A New Hope. Certainly the way that Rogue One ended ties directly into A New Hope, but it's in the height of the Empire. You've got Vader and Stormtroopers, Palpatine's running the show. There's so much interesting dynamics there. We get touches of the early eras of the rebellion in the animated series, like Rebels, and obviously early sort of eras in the Bad Batch. So it'll be really interesting to see how they played in that. And obviously just every time you see live action stormtroopers on screen is always fun. And obviously Mandalorian, we got left off in such a sort of a cliffhanger. The Darksaber being thrown into the mix here is really fascinating. And what is going to be his storyline now that he has kind of successfully completed his quest to return Grogu to his kind,
Is it going
to
to be
the
something
Jedi.
more focused on Mandalorian culture?
Yeah, because they referenced the fact that I think Boba Fett mentioned that Mandalore had been bombed to glass. So there's obviously some interesting, you know, story there. Obviously, the Mandalorians don't really have a homeworld. We get a feeling like people are sort of trying to bring them together again to be sort of the proud.
Of the Mandalorian,
and obviously something like the Darksaber is quite an important piece of that puzzle. So it'd be really interesting to see him being brought more into the wider Mandalorian society. Obviously, he was with a sort of more of a small enclave cluster that had very specific ideas around helmets and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to see him interacting with a few more. And obviously the Bad Batch, I really enjoyed the Bad Batch more than I thought I would.
Well, we enjoyed talking about it. So there's clearly a lot to really digest and talk about per episode, I think.
Yeah, I really want to see where they go with Omega. Obviously, things are still unresolved with Crosshair. We've just got all sorts of things that they could play around with there. So I'm really looking forward to it. And also, it's like the longest episode. So they've got the real...
longest season,
can really get into...
Yeah, 16 eps,
Yeah, so that they can really get into some great storytelling there. So I am just so excited for all of this. I mean, of course... throughout the year, hopefully we'll get a little bit more concrete information about some of the other upcoming shows, like
and
Ahsoka.
other content for that matter. I mean, the comics have some really interesting things happening. High Republic's wrapping up its first phase and you know, really hitting some climaxes, and you know, people that have been engaging in that are really excited about that. But in terms of like you say, you can't pick a favorite unless you've got a really, you know, absolute favourite character, but there's aspects of all of them I'm really looking forward to. I love the fact that, you know, as you say, Ewan McGregor, Diego Luna, Pedro Pascal, I mean, they all love their characters, and I think that really makes me look forward to each of these shows and seeing them really put everything into the respective characters, and I think that's why I'm looking forward to both Obi-Wan and Andor so intently, because of the people that are playing the key roles in many ways. The other thing that I'm particularly looking forward to is that Mandalorian, both seasons of it so far, has set the bar insanely high in terms of callbacks and surprises.
Yes.
Luke Skywalker reveal at the end, you know, even if you had inclinations that something like that was going to happen prior to or during the early minutes of the episode, it was still a really well executed punchline. And if they're going to have to try and insert excitement of that level into each of these shows, what form is that going to take?
It feels like the showrunners took a lot of glee in figuring out what sort of Easter eggs and new things that they could put in there that would just blow fans' minds. And it sort of felt like like you couldn't go near the internet if you hadn't seen these episodes when they first dropped, because everyone was like, I need to talk about this. That was mind-blowing. There was like all the staff references, even in the ones that weren't sort of quite as mind-blowing. There were still really cool sequences and little nods here and there for the fans to really sink their teeth into. So I can only just, I can't even imagine what we're going to be in for with the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Andor. There's going to be so much fun stuff that they're going to put in there, because they know the fans. It really thrives us up, It's
for
just
Obi-Wan, we know that Hayden Christensen's involved, so that can't be the big reveal. There's got to be even more than that, which is crazy.
Obviously, the end of Mandalorian Season 2, they brought out a pretty big gun in bringing in Luke Skywalker for that big epic end reveal. And obviously, I don't think they'd be able to manage something like that in each of the shows coming up next year, but they're going to have to do something kind of at that level
Similar
for something.
Magnitude,
yeah. It might be in Boba Fett, it might be in Obi-Wan, it might be in Andor. I mean, who knows?
They're all set up and they're all positioned for strong connections. They're all positioned for some pretty interesting reveals, just depending on where the writers want to take things.
Yeah, so just my mind wants to like just experiment and see what kind of crazy things might be out there, but at the same time, I don't want to sort of like accidentally anticipate something or get my hopes up for something that doesn't eventuate. I just want to see what awesomeness they've got in store for us.
Yep, so Book of Boba Fett kicks it all off tomorrow night, and hopefully we'll be rolling through Obi-Wan Kenobi, Bad Batch Season 2, Andor Season 1, Mando Season 3, pretty continuously thereafter. Going to be exciting times. Now, changing tack here, there is one thing that's come out of the blue. We talked about wishing that there was perhaps some sort of state of the production timeline update every now and then, just to let us know what's happening and when, and give us a bit of reassurance about what's coming out when, because even with Disney Plus Day, they didn't give us a lot of clarity about the release timelines for Bad Batch and Andor and even Obi-Wan. That's only come through speculation and tidbits of information subsequently. Something completely out of the blue is a title, Tales of the Jedi. Now, no idea whether this is going to be live action, animation, or some other format, but it was revealed, or at least leaked, released, whatever, however you want to conceptualize it, because at the Lucasfilm Limited crew gift that was given out to a subset of Lucasfilm crew, or perhaps I don't actually know how many people would have received it, but they had logos on the side of the packaging of what was a Christmas gift, a record player it happened to be, but that's irrelevant. Logos of all the current projects that they're working on, Bad Batch, Andor, and so forth, but amongst them was a previously unseen logo for Tales of the Jedi. It's basically a similar font to Return of the Jedi, but a similar format, sort of graphical structure to the Tales of the Jedi comic series from Dark Horse many, many years ago. Tales of the Jedi comic series from Dark Horse actually came out in 1993, October 93. It started and it ran for a few years. Not clear, no information yet to whether or not it relates to that previous use of the title, or if it's just something else unrelated, some sort of other anthology related to Jedi we don't even know a timeline, frankly. So that's completely out of the blue. I would love it to actually relate to the Dark Horse Tales of the Jedi comic, because that actually was quite pivotal in terms of setting up some elements of the old EU. But so far we know that they very rarely do verbatim adaptations of old content. They draw loosely on characters and events only, so it would surprise me if it was an actual one-to-one representation of the old Dark Horse Tales of the Jedi comics. But it would be nice if it was kind of set in that era, and there's a few reasons to think that it possibly could be. The Tales of the Jedi comics were set 5,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, and they focused on the heroes, Uluk Qel-Droma and Naomi Sunrider, and the antagonists, a few of them, Naga Sidao, Exar Kun, Fred and Nad. And it spanned quite a few generations and sort of told stories across generations, so it wasn't all directly focused on those characters, it was sometimes indirectly focused on them. And it spanned quite a few ages: Golden Age of the Sith, Fall of the Sith Empire, Beast Wars of Onderon, Fred and Nad and Naomi Sunrider had their own sort of chapters. And it built up to the Sith War and Redemption, and ultimately that tied quite closely into the Knights of the Old Republic video game, which was set from memory 30 years after the events portrayed in Tales of the Jedi Redemption. Now that's significant because we've been talking about Knights of the Old Republic, for quite a few reasons over the last few months, including the remastering of the game and the re-release and porting of the old version of the game, the involvement of Revan in various products and merchandising, and whether or not that's going to potentially tie into, something along the way, some canonization of Revan. It would be superb, really interesting if we see tales of, aspects of the old version of Tales of the Jedi cropping up with some of those, even if it's just some of those character names, some of those key characters being brought back into the canon.
As a big Old Republic era fan, I would be terribly, terribly excited if this is kind of, reimagining or resurrecting that sort of comic time period with these characters. But like you say, Disney doesn't really reuse old storylines and old content.
Not in a one-to-one manner.
No. We've brought back characters like Thrawn and things like that, but in new original ways, sort of not following storylines, obviously. The sequel trilogy didn't reference any of the sort of existing books about Luke and Mara and things like that. So I'm almost wondering if this is going to be basically taking a title that could fit in just about anywhere. And maybe this is about the High Republic. Maybe they're going to want to push that era a little bit more. I kind of see them putting a little bit more emphasis in the High Republic era. I think that it's kind of missing more of the sort of multimedia aspect to the books.
Well, it's a lot of world building that's taking place, so they've got a background, they've got context to work with it.
But I also wonder if the popularity and sort of mind-blowingness of seeing Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian, I wouldn't exactly put it past them to sort of explore that sort of very early Jedi Order days after Return of the Jedi with Luke.
Yeah, or it could just be an anthology that spans multiple times, just unrelated, unconnected stories. But then on the other hand, this could be an opportunity just to go for low-hanging fruit and use the existing material that just fills that timeline and bring it in almost wholesale, because we know it relates to Star Wars The Old Republic and the re-releases of Knights of the Old Republic games, for instance. And if they just bring it in its entirety, they've kind of filled quite a big gap in the continuity.
If they're clever, they would have seen the sort of fan reaction to the likes of Knights of the Old Republic, sort of gauged how popular the Old Republic era is. I often see people talking online saying that the Old Republic era is where they really want to see explored in this new era, where you've just got lots of Sith, lots of Jedi, lots of different factions.
The history of the Force has always been engaging. It's always been an area of curiosity. Where did the first Jedi come from? How did they first discover the Force? How did they sort of start to create the Jedi Order and so forth? It's always been a really fun notion to explore, I think.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that it is sort of the classic Old Republic era, whether this is an animated story or, it could be live action. That would just be mind-blowing. It takes me back to seeing the Star Wars The Old Republic video game cinematics, and every time people watch those, they're like, oh man, a movie in this era or shot like this, all sort of CG and everything would be amazing.
Yeah, well, the tech that they're using for the volume and in terms of creating all sorts of planetary backgrounds and so forth means that nothing's off the cards. It's so much easier to do just about anything. Any sort of context, new or old, any sort of point in the Star Wars timeline or Star Wars galaxy, frankly.
Yeah, no matter what it is, I'm excited. It's a new Star Wars title. Obviously, there's a couple that might have been dropped to the bottom of that list from what they announced, whether sort of officially cancelled, never happening, or just kind of shelved.
In some ways, the ones that have fallen off in the delays possibly for Rogue Squadron, still going to be coming. Content from Rangers of the High Republic moved to other places, but this is just left field in terms of it's the announcement or the reveal, and in terms of where it fits in. It's a nice break. It's a refreshing change. Not that we need it necessarily, a change from the content of The Mandalorian and the stuff we're seeing right now.
Well, predominantly, most of the storylines that we've gotten so far have been very much not talking about Force users. We've gotten a glimpse, we have Luke, we have a bit of Ahsoka there, but generally it's been,
a little bit of the magic hand thing.
Yeah. They don't really understand what the Force is and what Jedi are and stuff like that. The Mandalorian says to Luke, are you a Jedi? They don't really know. The lightsaber is not exactly a dead giveaway in this sort of era. Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to play around with an era where Force users are just everywhere.
So this information was kind of leaked, but there's a lot of talk that it was an intentional leak because there's no way that this would not have gotten out. It was on this, as we say, it was on the side of a Lucasfilm gift packaging. There's just no way that it wouldn't have made it into the wild. So it may have been an intentional teaser to get a little bit of conversation among fans, and here we are conversing about it, but we'll see where it goes. I'm certainly keeping our ears very widely and acutely open to listen out for more news on this new title and this new topic. All right, let's round out things by having a quick chat about local store reports. The most notable thing is that there are a number of Boxing Day sales still going on right now. But first, just a couple of things that I've noticed put up on the SWNZ website. A couple of new shirts that have been showing up. EB Games has some cool Boba Fett t-shirts, and I particularly mention them because there is one that has Fennec Shan and Boba Fett on the throne. It's quite a cool graphic that I particularly like. And graphic tees at JJ's in the men's license section. There's also another cool Boba Fett one there with the word Hunter over a Mandalorian helmet. It's basically a graphic for a Boba Fett helmet, but the colouring is tweaked and distorted a little bit. But either way, it's quite a cool design and quite a cool colour mix. Talking of the sales though, Toyco have a good sale going on at the moment. I think they've got a couple more days of that sale running. They've got such things as the Cobb Vanth Deluxe Black Series 6-inch figure priced at less than $60, $59.49. Good price for that figure, because we know the deluxe figures are a little bit overpriced. And I think Cobb Vanth, he's actually been released a little bit earlier than we thought, and Toyco managed to have him listed. I don't know if anyone's got their hands on him yet, but I think they're shipping out from Toyco right now. And Mighty Ape have a big Boxing Day sale going on. Covers most of the current common Star Wars ranges. So you've got the vintage collection figures for $23, Black Series 6-inch figures for $31, Retro Mando 3.75-inch figures for about $18, and Funko Mini down to $16, and that'll be going on for a couple more days as well. And as we roll into the new year, we're actually expecting quite a lot of new product to be coming out. We've had pre-orders open for quite a lot of Book of Boba Fett stuff for quite a while now, and most of that's going to be starting to become available and to ship through January and February.
And of course, as we go through the episodes of Book of Boba Fett, there's no doubt going to be, if not product pre-orders, then at least sort of reveals, artwork and stuff like that.
Well,
like
everything
these
from Book of Boba
figures
Fett we've seen so far is just Boba and Fennec.
That we already know. So
because they're too spoilery.
Yeah, as we get through, we could see vehicles, all sorts of characters and stuff like that. So that's going to be fun and something to look forward to as well.
Yeah, that's right. But on that note, that's about it for today's installment. I guess we're done doing talking. If you got any thoughts on the topics we discussed today, well, we're definitely keen to hear them. Leave a comment on the YouTube page or our website page for this podcast. Thank you for tuning in for this podcast and all the previous podcasts through 2021. We appreciate you taking your time to listen to us share our passion for Star Wars. Stay tuned to our website, SWNZ.co.nz, for Star Wars news for New Zealanders and another podcast episode next week and every Tuesday. Don't forget, you can jump on over to either our Facebook group or the SWNZ message boards to discuss all the latest Star Wars news with other Kiwi fans. Kia ora, kia noho haumaru, thank you for listening and stay safe.
Turou Hawaiki, may the Force be with you.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, go ahead and like the video, check out the SWNZ Podcast playlist for our other episodes, and subscribe for alerts about new episodes. See you next time.